Hello again, Alan here, storyteller. Today it's the town of Fenton, the fifth of our 6 towns. It's the largest of the 6 towns, and it comes from 2 old words, tun, which we've mentioned before, meaning town, and fen, which is white meadow, so the town of the white meadow. Probably something like Old Man's Beard, all round here many, many years ago. We're in the town hall. And the town hall is a beautiful building with this wonderful war memorial behind me from the First World War. But many years ago, the town hall used to be the court. And this is where our story's from. And it involves a little girl called Caitlin, who's 10. Now, Caitlin was on half term, and her mum was a security officer in this very building. She was staying with her Auntie Josie across the road when her mum rang up. Hello, love. Listen, 2 of our officers have been poorly and they can't come in today, so I'm having to stay over through lunch. Ask Auntie Josie if she'll make me a sandwich. And bring an apple, will you? Yes, Mum, no problem at all. She told Auntie Josie. And Auntie Josie said, of course. And they made a nice tuna and mayo sandwich, got a nice red rosy apple, and got to the front door and the phone rang again. Hello, said Auntie Josie. Oh, hello, Phyllis. How are you? Caitlin's heart sank. She knew Phyllis, who was a lovely old lady, but when Auntie Josie and Phyllis got together, the talking went on for hours. She'd never get a sandwich across to her mum. Auntie Josie put her hand over the receiver. Listen, be careful and be safe. Go across, watch Christchurch Street, you know what the traffic's like. And you'll be okay. Go and leave it with that nice security chap at the top desk. Caitlin was really thrilled. She was being allowed and trusted to go out on her own. She went out and crossed Christchurch Street, went up past the Christchurch itself, crossed into the road, went into the building, and she saw Jimmy, the security guard, on the main desk. A very big man, but with a lovely smile. And he knew Caitlin, because he knew Caitlin's mum, and they waved. And that's when the story begins. As Caitlin approached Jimmy, a very rude man barged in front of her and said, "Hey mate, where's court number 3? Jimmy looked at him and said, "Bobby, as if you don't know where court number 3 is. You've been here often enough. Up the stairs, go through the door, go on your way." He smiled at Caitlin. "Sorry about that, Flower. That's Bobby Burke, a most appropriately named man. He's been here more often than me, and I work here." Caitlin smiled, handed him the sandwich. Just at that moment, a large crowd of people came through the front door and across the hall. Jimmy stepped out from behind his desk. "Whoa! I know why you're all here," he said. "But I'm afraid there's only room for 10 of you in the court. So if you wouldn't mind deciding who they were that was going to go in, I'll let you in." A little voice spoke. "Mom, you said we'd find Bertie here. I can't see him anywhere." Jimmy, big man though he was, with a big deep voice, leaned down towards the little boy and he said, "Look, son, I don't know where Bertie is, but I promise you that we'll do our very best to find him, and the magistrates will do their very best as well. Now if we just go and wait with Mummy, there's a good boy." Caitlin looked around. There was all sorts of people. There was a mum with children. There was another one with a baby. There was mums and dads and ordinary people walking around, and even an elderly gentleman in a wheelchair and an elderly lady in a motorised scooter. She wondered who Bertie was and why he was so important to all these people. Perhaps they were related. After about 10 minutes discussion, a lady came over and said to Jimmy, "Is it all right if we come back out every now and then just to tell people what's going on?" He said, of course. As long as there's no fuss or commotion, we don't mind. There's a lot of other people here, you know." 10 people were selected, and Jimmy directed them to courtroom number 4. Caitlin wondered who Bertie was that so many people wanted to find him. Then she realised there were so many people there she couldn't get through the front door. Jimmy said, "Don't worry, you can stay here as long as you're quiet." And he rang Auntie Josie to make sure that she knew where she was. He had to leave a voicemail because Auntie Josie was still talking to Phyllis. Caitlin listened to the conversations. Bertie's friends went up to courtroom 4, and Jimmy explained that's where Caitlin's mum was working today. Caitlin felt very proud that her mum was security on such a high-level case. She listened to the crowd, because they weren't very quiet, and they started getting photographs out and sharing them with each other. And it turns out it wasn't just Bertie who was missing, but Max and Bella, and Socks, and Sleepy, and Flipper, and Bongo. She turned to Jimmy and says, "Who calls the children Bongo?" Jimmy laughed. "They're not children that's missing, my love. They're pets. All these people have lost pets in the last 3 weeks. You see that lady over there in a green coat?" Caitlin nodded. "Well, she's my sister's friend, and her rabbits, Flipper and Roger, have been stolen. And that little boy down there with the pink wellies, well, he got a dog called Bongo to live opposite me, and Bongo's been gone for 3 days now." Oh, now it makes sense. Now Caitlin was really interested, and she listened more carefully to all the strange ways that the pets had been stolen. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Bobby Burke, the rude man from before, and he was talking to another chap and a lady from the court. The conversation was very short, and she didn't take a lot of notice. She was far more interested in all the different pets that had gone. Do you know what? There was a parrot, as well as cats and dogs and lizards and a snake and a budgie, and even an ant farm. And they'd all gone missing in the last 3 weeks. Caitlin turned and said to Jimmy, "Have they caught someone then?" "Oh yes," said Jimmy. "The local pet shop owner sold one of those chaps out there a puppy. And it was exactly like the puppy that had been stolen. They had a picture." Caitlin thought for a moment. "But a lot of puppies look very similar." "Aye, that's what they have a trial for, to find out who's telling the truth." After about 10 minutes, Caitlin got a bit thirsty, and she asked Jimmy if she could get a drink. And Jimmy said, "Hang on a second, Elaine," and he called over a friend of his, another security guard. "Would you mind taking Caitlin down to the staff room, please? Show her the fridge so she can get a drink." "No problem at all," said Elaine. "Very nice lady." And they went down the same corridor that the two men had disappeared to earlier. But halfway down on the right-hand side was a staff room, and Elaine said, "Look, there's the fridge, help yourself to pop, and there's some magazines there. Shall you be all right?" "Oh, I'll be fine, thank you. You know your way back if you need to get to Jimmy?" "Oh, yes, thank you, I'm very fine." She picked up a magazine on wildlife photography. She did like animals. As she was flicking through the book, looking at wildlife pictures and insects and animals and things, she heard a whispering at the door. She got up and listened. It was a man's voice. She recognised it, but she couldn't think where from. "And I'm telling you, they're safe where they are." "What's he mean?" And a woman's voice, very angry. "And I'm telling you to move them. The pet shop owner's going to get off. He's not guilty, he's got a cast iron alibi, and none of the other animals in his shop look even remotely like those you took." How did the woman know he was going to get off? Caitlin was very puzzled. Just then, the door handle turned, and she ran quickly back to her seat and picked up the magazine again. The woman entered the room. Caitlin's heart skipped a beat. It was the same woman, the court official, who'd been talking to the two men earlier on. Caitlin hoped that she didn't notice as her hands were shaking while she turned the pages of the magazine. "Hello, what are you doing here?" Jimmy said I could wait here while I wait for my mum. She's in court number 1. "Oh, Helen. Oh, my goodness, you do look like her." "Yes." "Well, if Jimmy said it was okay, then it's okay. I'm just making myself a cup of tea. She's going to be very busy today. Lots of witnesses." The woman poured herself a cup of tea. It took ages over drinking it, about 10 minutes. Caitlin didn't say anything. she just carried on looking at the pictures of the wildlife magazine. Eventually the woman got up and said, "Right, I shall have to go. Nice to meet you. Hopefully I'll see you later." "Bye." "Bye," said Caitlin. And as she left, she let out a big sigh of relief. Caitlin's heart was pounding. Dum, 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 dum. She had to tell somebody. But what if she got into trouble for listening? She shouldn't have been listening at the door. But it was really important. She sat down again and thought about it. And as she thought, the image of that little boy wondering where Bertie was came into her mind. She made up her mind. "I'm going to tell Jimmy." Leaving her pop on the table, she went to the door, hands shaking a little bit, and opened it. She was about to go down the corridor to Jimmy when she heard the man again. He was at the end of the corridor, down some steps. She couldn't see him, but she could hear him. He sounded like he was on the phone. "I'm telling you, she says we've got to move him." "I told her that." "No, I'm still waiting going about the burglary." "It's not my fault." "No, you didn't. No. You had the keys to the library, not me." But I can't." "If she says we have to move him..." I know. Okay, we'll do it tonight. Bring the big vans. I'll meet you here." She saw the man's foot on the stair. She ran as quickly and quietly as she possibly could down the corridor towards the main hall. She heard his footsteps behind her. She looked for Jimmy, but he wasn't anywhere to be found. "I have to find my mum," she said, to nobody in particular. But how was she going to get there? The only way of getting there was a security card, and of course she hadn't got one. As she was thinking about what to do next, Bobby Burke, the rude man, came around the corner. He didn't take any notice at all of Caitlin, but he did look to see if any of the security officers were watching him. Then he took out a security card from his pocket and swiped it. How did he get a security card, she thought? But she didn't really care, because once the door opened, she realised she could follow him in and she'd get closer to her mum. She waited till the very last second, and as the door was closing, she darted in very quickly, and it closed with a hiss behind her. Psst. By this time, Bobby Burke had reached the courtroom door. Caitlin, sneaking in behind him, got into the waiting room, didn't close the door, just sat there, waiting, listening. He tapped on the window of the courtroom. A couple of seconds later, the courtroom lady came out. "What are you doing here? We can't be seen together. How did you get in?" "Never mind that. I've had an idea. Listen, we've got to move the big stuff tonight. But if you let me have the keys to your car, I can move the little stuff so it's gone out of the way." "Are you stupid? Seriously? My car is on the staff car park. You wouldn't get past there without getting arrested. It's not like you're unknown in this courthouse, is it?" Bobby Burke looked crestfallen. Caitlin felt sorry for him. Almost. "Now get out of here before I have you arrested for being an idiot." The lady went back into the courtroom, and Caitlin hid in the waiting room and waited for Bobby to go past. She waited for the door at the bottom to close quietly before popping out into the corridor. She had to see her mum, but how was she going to get into the courtroom without a special key? Just as she was wondering this, the courtroom door flung open. She jumped back into the waiting room. Thankfully, it was lunchtime and everybody was piling out. She waited and mingled with the crowd as they were walking out towards the main hall again. Then her heart froze. "Caitlin, what are you doing here?" It was her mum. Now, Caitlin wanted to talk to her mum, but not in front of other people, and certainly not when her mum was angry. The courtroom lady walked by, giving Caitlin a quizzical look. Caitlin had been brought up to be polite, but she couldn't help herself. "Arrest her, Mum! She's the one who stole the animals!" A few of the people hadn't quite left the corridor, and they stopped and turned around. Her mum wasn't in the mood for games, it showed on her face. "This is Mrs. Thomas, one of the most respected people in the court. I can't just go arresting people because you say so." Mrs. Thomas smiled. "Kids, what imaginations. Still, it isn't right to make accusations without evidence, young lady. People could get into a lot of trouble for it." And she went to walk away. Caitlin's mum was not happy. "But Mum, ask her how she knows Bobby Burke, because he's in on it too." And her mum said, "How do you know Bobby Burke, Caitlin?" Mrs. Thomas spoke again. "There can't be many people in here who don't know who Bobby Burke is. He's in here often enough." "Yes," said Caitlin, "but I haven't. And I heard you whispering at the staff room door, and I heard him talking about moving them tonight, and he asked if he could borrow your car to move them because they're in the old library across the road." "What nonsense! You really must keep your daughter under control. In fact, I rather insist that she goes and leaves the building immediately. Go on, take her away." She stared menacingly at Caitlin. Caitlin's mum spoke quietly. "Now, Caitlin isn't perfect, but she doesn't make stories up and tell lies. I'll deal with the being here out of place later on, but if you were together, that's quite easy to check. I do remember letting you out of court a few minutes before we closed for lunch." "This is preposterous. I refuse to be interrogated by a security officer." Just then, Jimmy came walking up the corridor, through the crowd that had started to gather. "Excuse me, I've just heard what was being said about Bobby Burke, and I'd quite like to know what was going on. I mean, if you met him, I can just ask him." By now, the crowd had gathered and started to come up the corridor very slowly. Mrs. Thomas looked very flustered. Look, I did leave the courtroom, but it was because I thought I'd dropped some notes outside." "Then look through the windows in the old library," said Caitlin. "Well, the windows are boarded up," said Jimmy, "and I don't know who's got the key." "There was another man as well," said Caitlin. "He was wearing a blue hoodie." "Yeah, that's probably Charlie, Bobby's brother. I saw him earlier on, before you came across with your mother's sandwiches." "But I saw both of them talking to her," and she pointed at Mrs. Thomas. Someone in the crowd shouted out, "Why don't we just go down to the library then, and shout our pets? Even if it's boarded up, they've got to stop barking and meowing." "Well, I doubt that would work," said Mrs. Thomas. "The boards are soundproofed." "How do you know that?" asked Caitlin's mum. It was the council owned the building. I'm sure they would have done a thorough job." Jimmy got onto his walkie-talkie. "Security 1 to Security 5. Are you there, Jeff?"
Security 5 here. What's up, Jim?
"Do me a favour, please.
Security 5, yes. Nothing happening here.
Go across the road to the library and whistle.
Whistle?
Whistle loud.
Eh?
Just indulge me, please." Everyone waited in complete silence while Security 5, a nice man called Jeff, went across the road and whistled.
Security 1. I whistled and there's something inside the library. Sounds like half a zoo in there. Dogs barking and a parrot saying very rude words.
Jimmy looked at Mrs. Thomas. "I think you'd better come with me, madam." And he escorted her through the door of courtroom 4, which had got a door at the other end leading down to the cells. The crowd was getting restless. "Let's get our pets back," somebody called out. Caitlin's mum said, yes, we will. But let's do it properly." And she rang the council, and they sent somebody up with a key, and soon all the owners and their pets were reunited. Bobby Burke was arrested in court number 3 even before he'd been fined for his other crimes. Turned out, him and his brother Charlie had a sister, Geraldine Burke. Well, before she was married. And then she became Geraldine Thomas. And she became a court officer. The idea was that she'd sell the pets they'd stolen abroad. Make a lot of money. Well, of course, Caitlin's mum wasn't angry anymore, and she took her out to the cinema for a treat. Later that week, they got a phone call. It was Mr. Faisal, the pet shop owner. He was so happy that somebody had come forward and he wasn't found guilty that he said Caitlin could have any pet she chose. She chose a puppy. And Mum said, you should call it courage, because that's what you showed by coming forward. It got even better. All the pet owners were so happy to have their pets back, they all chipped in, and she got a kennel, a lead, a doggy basket, bowls for food and water, and a huge bag of dog food. As for the Burkes, well, they're in cages of their own, well away from anybody else's pets. Thanks for listening.